Hey Shane, what inspired you to create Owner, and did any personal experiences shape that vision?
Hey Pat, yeah, my background with Ownr, I think, starts as a young lawyer in Toronto. I was working in a law firm for about 4 or 5 years before starting to think seriously about technology. And personally, I've always just really enjoyed working with small business owners in any aspect of my life. And as a very junior lawyer, I was getting lots of experience with small business owners. But the problem with being a lawyer is that as you gain more experience, you get more expensive. And I found myself gradually dealing less and less with small business owners who could afford me and more with larger clients who, frankly, didn't have the same sort of entrepreneurial passion that got me excited to work with them. The legal issues can be interesting on both sides, but it started there. And then that sort of set off a few other light bulbs of, well, how can I offer similar services or other adjacent legal business services through technology in a way that's much more affordable and might not necessarily involve a one-to-one old fashioned personal connection, but a way where at the end of the day, the job gets done, it uses technology, it's efficient, and the key thing is to find ways to make it more affordable for small business owners. So that was kind of what kicked off the idea of doing small business incorporation through technology, making it easy and accessible, but also ensuring that the at the end result of it is that entrepreneurs and small business owners are getting what they need, and that you don't need to sacrifice quality by engaging with technology.
Do you remember the moment where you were like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then talk about like that transition from like corporate law into entrepreneurship?
Sure. Well, it wasn't just like 1 minute. I was lucky to have two fantastic co-founders on this journey. One was also a lawyer. The other was a experienced software engineer. So we were friends. The three of us had been friends for years and years. We grew up together in Calgary, so we had some history, which meant we could really sit together as friends with different backgrounds and talk about like what would the solution look like. But to get back to your answer, I do definitely remember the time I gave my notice at the law firm, and I said, I'm out of here and I'm going to do my own thing. And it's it was a nerve wracking experience. I think it's not one a lot of lawyers do at that stage of their career, to kind of just pack it up and do something unconventional. It's a career path that, and this isn't any sort of insult to the legal profession, which I think is a great career path for some, but often when you're on that path, you stick around, you go from an associate to a partner, and you sort of build your career and your skills. But for me, I decided to take an early departure from that career path and go down something a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more tech driven, a little more entrepreneurial, which felt right to me. But there were definitely some lawyers and others who were wondering what the heck I was doing and why I would put all this at risk. But in the end, it all worked out well, and I'm still friends with plenty of the lawyers I worked with back in those days.
Let's talk about a little bit about Owner's growth. How has it evolved under your leadership? And talked about the acquisition of RBC and how that came about and the transition from that.
Sure. So, like picking up on the last thread. So when I did leave law behind with my two co-founders, we started a company which at the time was called Founded Technologies, and that's where we built this technology to streamline and automate the incorporation process for small businesses. So that went very well. We found there was a niche market that we could really go after. Found the kind of quintessential product market fit at that point in business formation. And if I jump ahead to around 2019, we formed a commercial partnership with RBC, and RBC at the time was running a business unit called Ownr. And before we were acquired, to jump ahead a little bit, we had this commercial agreement where we were providing businesses who needed to be incorporated, but they also needed small business banking services. They needed a bank account and credit cards and other things that the bank could provide. So we sort of centered in on this really important moment in a business's journey where we were kind of the very top of the funnel, providing that incorporation and early stage banking services. So it was a pretty good partnership right from the start. We both kind of centered in on the complementary nature of what we were both offering. So we operated for a little while through that partnership model, and then in the dark days of 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, there was a moment where I think at Founded at the time we felt like the jig was up and we should just pack up and go home, because business, when the pandemic first hit, it just business stopped entirely, and we thought that that was that. But the good news, of course, is a couple months later. Uh, Entrepreneurship had never been hotter. When people were at home thinking about what to do with their lives or had been laid off, more people needed to be incorporated than we'd ever seen before. A huge surge in our business happened around the midst of the pandemic, which then sparked a real interest in taking the next step with this partnership with RBC. And the best way to do that was to get into acquisition discussions. So we closed the deal in August of 2020, and now I'm sitting here in April 2020, late April 2024, and it's been a real journey, of course. But to go from a startup to working within the bank, we've managed to keep our brand identity as Ownr pretty distinct, and also to pursue a mission to serve small business owners the best we can. So we're at a point now where we've served 150,000 Canadian businesses. So clearly, the volume is there, the demand is there, and we've become known as the market leader for small business and corporation. Um, Plenty more we can talk about what we want to accomplish, but right now I think we're really feeling like partnering with RBC was the right move for us, because it really allowed us to have a huge impact and to grow the way we want to grow. Just because at the end of the day, it's not about whether it's my business or it's RBC's business. It's how do we best serve Canadian entrepreneurs, and we've kind of stayed true to the mission that way.
That's what I really love about the product. It's because it allows people who have, they may have a skill, a talent. It could be in the trades, it could be anything. Um, it really makes it easy for someone to get started. It helps them with fundamentals, and we'll talk more about this later. But there's other tools and stuff that you guys make available for someone that wants to run a business. So it takes a lot of like sort of the guesswork. You just kind of hand it to people on a silver platter. Like, here's some of the stuff that you probably didn't even know or thought about it. Here it is, and get started. So that it's really cool.
Yeah, and to pick up on that point a little bit, I think when we started out in this business, we were very excited about tech companies and scalable technology companies, which I still love and think they're great when they work. But as the business has evolved, we've realized that we're more for the sort of less glamorous small businesses, the solopreneurs. Someone who runs a plumbing business or a roofer, they don't have a lot of services, especially tech services that cater towards them. And to be a champion for that type of small business that doesn't necessarily need to grow to be $1 billion business, but
Yep.
saying that we're here for you, and whether you're a small retail shop or like I said, a tradesperson, Ownr's got your back, and that's the message that we really try to champion. And I think that's why we've got a loyal following from our 150,000 businesses that have used us, is because they're like, oh, thank God, someone that's kind of looking out for me and making my life easier, and these services cheaper and more affordable. So I'm really excited that we've accepted that we're not necessarily catering towards the next unicorn company. It's just all about helping people build businesses that are going to sustain their lifestyle.
Can you talk about how emerging technology has been, part of the owner's success?
Yeah, well, that's like I'm still very much a tech-driven entrepreneur and always looking at ways to leverage technology. But maybe I've become a little bit more of a pragmatist than I would have at the start of the journey when I look at technology. Now the question is really like, well, if we're going to explore new technologies, what impact is that going to have on our end user? Going back to those micro businesses and solopreneurs. So, we've lived through several iterations of, for example, blockchain technology. And there was definitely a time where we would have sat down and said, everyone's doing blockchain. Why aren't we doing blockchain? And looking back now, and I'm not saying blockchain's dead, but it's far less prominent in the discussion. We never went down that road. And now I'm like, I'm great that we never did blockchain for blockchain's sake. That if we found the use case for it where it would have benefited the roofer, we'll do it on
Okay.
blockchain. So where I'm going with this is right now we're living in it through AI, and I think AI is likely to be much more impactful than blockchain. But have we rewired Ownr in order to incorporate generative AI or anything? We haven't. We've taken a bit of a slower, pragmatic approach. Um, you can criticize that and say we're being laggards, but when I look again at our users and say, do they need generative AI to accomplish their goals, or is the current solution working? And our current solution is more kind of logic based, a little bit more like, if you're technical, you might call an expert system rather than an AI system. But what we have works, and I think as long as it's working and we are looking ahead and we're defensive about it, I feel like we're okay. So um, that's I should say, I think there is a time and place where AI could be a bigger part of Ownr than it is today, but we've managed to grow while just keeping a healthy bit of skepticism and always the focus on our users. So that's I think where I stand on emerging technology, but this is absolutely an active debate both within my leadership team and other stakeholders about how we approach these technologies.
Let's talk a little bit more about Canadian entrepreneurship in the landscape there. So you mentioned a little bit about the solopreneurs. Let's talk about, micro entrepreneurs and the solopreneurs. Like, where do you see the trends around that?
Yeah, I think the trend that I'm excited about is um, the micro businesses and the solopreneurs who have maybe I should say a little bit more ambition to grow. I mean, I've already talked about championing the small businesses over the potential scalable unicorn type businesses, but that I think there's this really interesting niche of small business owners who are saying, I can grow a really big business and I can do it basically on my own or with one or two other people. They're not saying I need to raise $500 million and hire an army of developers. They're again picking up on a theme of pragmatism, saying with the power of some tools in front of me, I can run a pretty lean business that's going to scale, and I can do a lot of it by engaging with technology in a very deliberate and focused way. Uh, the maybe the legacy examples go back to things like QuickBooks. At one point, you were starting a business. The question would be, well, how do I hire a bookkeeper or an accountant? And now it's saying, well, if I get to know QuickBooks better, I can probably eliminate that headcount. So we're seeing more and more of these things. Obviously, Ownr is an example for that incorporation piece and some of the ongoing legal needs of a business, saying you don't need in-house counsel until you're way, way bigger. For now, like Ownr's got your back for the kind of legal stuff you'll need to get your business started. So I think that's the trend is highly ambitious, highly focused small businesses. I'm excited about that because I think Ownr plays a big part in that journey, and even picking up on some of the healthy skepticism around AI. There's also a very optimistic case for using AI to increase these ambitions, saying if I can outsource some of my work to AI tools, I can have an even smaller team that could grow even bigger. So I just love to see the ambition and creativity of entrepreneurs, and that's one way it's being unleashed right now with uh, using technology and keeping costs fairly constrained at early stage.
Why do you believe we should move away from the term side hustle in today's entrepreneurial context?
That's a totally fair question. Something about side hustle to me has always been a little bit cringy, but I find myself saying it because it's people know what you mean by it, and I guess there's an economic reality to it in that a lot of these side hustles are started by people who are having trouble affording their day-to-day life these days with a stable 9 to 5 job. So I feel like maybe side hustle um, can diminish the challenges some people are facing right now, just generally with the soaring cost of living. So side hustle seems to be putting a happy face on something that might be just might be a challenge. So that's one side. The other side is like the the whatever you want to call it, going back to what I was saying earlier about the ambition of small business owners, I think it's really cool what people can accomplish in their spare time by building a business. So maybe my case is pretty extreme, where I was a busy young lawyer grinding it out long hours, and then kind of went cold turkey and just said, I'm out, I'm going to do this now. I think you could probably make a case that whatever you want to use the word side hustle or not, someone could start a business like that on the side, and gradually test the waters instead of feeling like they need to absolutely quit their defined career path and go do something entrepreneurial. There's ways of mixing the two together, which I think are probably interesting. And frankly, it comes down to how much risk you can really take on in your life. That at that time where I left law behind, I was very open to a lot of risk. As things change, as I age, maybe I couldn't take on that kind of risk in my life today. So side hustle could be a great way of, getting into entrepreneurship without giving up everything. But to use, so I've given you several reasons why I guess like I like the idea of having an entrepreneurial aspect to your life, but I still can't use the word side hustle without feeling like kind of gross about it. So,
Um, there's a high failure rate in startups traditionally. What key factors do you think contribute to the success or failures in new businesses in Canada?
I'm probably not the first one to say it, but what I really think is important is not falling in love with the idea that you have when you start, and in understanding that building a business is definitely a journey, and it's going to take you in directions that you didn't anticipate when you started it. So as much as you can sit back and try to map out your journey and think, okay, here's where I am today. Here's where I'm going to exit the business in 5 to 10 years. You're never going to anticipate what's going to come up for, like, not to dwell on my own examples, but really for me it was not understanding the combined value of the business that I dreamed up with my co-founders, and the value to a financial institution like RBC. I only understood the value of the business that we defined, focused on incorporation and legal software effectively. Once we started on this journey, that's when we started having these discussions about, oh, wow, there's this whole adjacent world of value that we were blind to when we mapped out the business. This business is a lot bigger and more valuable than we anticipated, but we wouldn't have really known that. And even speaking to early stage investors, no one really knew that that was the direction we were going to take. But that's how we built a business that resulted in a successful exit, was the combined value. So, working my way back to your question again, I think the idea is just uh, get active, get connected to other people to understand the full value that you can generate, but don't focus too deeply, or don't put up blockers to other opportunities that come up, because that could, at the end of the day, be where the real value behind your idea lies.
So you mentioned it no longer takes money to make money. Could you elaborate on the context of modern entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think in that case, similar to what I was saying earlier about the ability for smaller businesses to have a bigger reach. I mean, you need to still survive in life, and I think that maybe these days I'm feeling with the struggle a lot of people are under for just cost of living. I'm trying to tone it down a little bit, and acknowledge that. Obviously, first of all, you got to look after yourself and your family. So that's never going to be free. But the amount of available tools, and the just the resources that you can put together, like a website and e-commerce shop. These things don't take a lot of technical expertise. It takes time to learn, but if you're open to learning about these things, then yeah, the initial startup capital of a fairly valuable business has come way down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I probably would warn myself about being too bold and saying it doesn't take any money, but at the same time, it does. It takes time to learn how to use some really valuable tools, which are quite affordable. So entrepreneurs have more support than ever. That's why I really do think that it's a great time to be an entrepreneur, despite all the challenges out there. But it really comes down to investing in some of your own learning about how to engage tools cheaply.
Yeah, I think technology is definitely open the doors and remove barriers to entrepreneurship? Because maybe just as little as 10 years ago, you would think that you would require over $1 million for some businesses. Now with
Yeah.
50,000, 25,000, or even less, you could start a pretty good business that you could eventually scale if you get the business model right.
Yeah, and it's become a cliche to some extent, but those limitations and the challenges you face early on do inspire creative solutions. So I think that's instead of always looking for fundraising as almost like a prerequisite, uh, yeah, just imagine if fundraising isn't an option, what would you do? And it's not an option for every type of business.
Yeah, I think Canadians are really good at bootstrapping. They're very creative at finding ways to like make do and do what needs to get done in order for the business to survive. I've been in companies, software companies that have done this very well. So I think it's just something that Canadians are just innate at. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Um, let's talk about how does Ownr serve as a crucial resource for entrepreneurs. I kind of mentioned this at the top because I did take a closer look, and there's some really cool tools that you guys partner with. You have embedded into the software itself, but can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think what we're known as, for good reason, is the place to go to incorporate your business, and that's great. I will never say that's not true, but I don't think we're known as well for some of our more advanced features. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is, after you incorporate, Ownr is a subscription platform, and there's a lot of features where we encourage entrepreneurs to come back to us. And for example, if you want to manage your cap table, if you want to issue new shares to an investor or a partner, you can do that through Ownr. We have a library of legal documents, standard templates from NDAs to employment agreements, whatever you need. We have ways of generating these documents too for our users. So there's there's a world of value that we can offer beyond incorporation, but at the same time, I think the journey with Ownr for most people starts at incorporation, and we have from there ways of encouraging you to engage our platform for ongoing compliance. In addition to the sort of documents I've mentioned, just trying to keep the business uh, legally on the right track. In addition to just being set up right at the incorporation date.
Outside of work, what drives, motivates you personally?
When I think honestly about what drives me to work, I think it comes down to great teams. I love being a part of like a really talented, smart, passionate team, and in any place I've worked where I feel like we've got the momentum we've needed, it's come from a team mindset. So I think that's been a big piece of sort of expanding the team within RBC is to find a group of very talented employees committed to Ownr's mission who, not trying to put this diplomatically, but who you might not otherwise find in a bank environment. People who are really entrepreneurial and ambitious about the mission of building a business, doing something new inside the confines of this big bank. So yeah, I'm very much motivated by like working together with a team and kind of doing what's right for my team. I'm a huge advocate for not just Ownr, but for the people who work there, and the same thing goes for the days of running an independent startup with my co-founders. It was really about a culture where people felt supported and inspired, and were really doing their best work there.
How did your family react to you wanting to leave corporate law to like get into entrepreneurship? And then how did you kind of like manage those concerns?
That's a very good question, and honestly, it was mixed results depending on who I was speaking to. But I think there's nothing more stable, or at least more traditionally stable, than being a lawyer. At least it makes it very easy for your parents or relatives or anyone else to say, that Shane, he's a lawyer. It's a very defined thing. And what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is entrepreneur isn't understood or defined quite as well. I think we're moving out of a generation that saw entrepreneurship as like the default when you can't do anything else. It's like, yeah, there's a doctor, there's a lawyer, and there's that miscellaneous category of doing something with a business. Now, I think entrepreneurship, especially like, I'm talking like fairly recently, the last 5, 10 years, we're seeing it become more understood as something almost resembling a vocation of sorts, of like someone who builds businesses and builds value. And I think that's great. Um, but in terms of my experience, back a little over 10 years ago, breaking the news, yeah, I think there was um, certain people saying, well, good luck with that, I guess. Unsure what I had in mind. And then others who thought I was um, jeopardizing a good thing I had going in law. And they weren't incorrect, but in terms of me and what I wanted to accomplish, kind of had to go down my own road to figure that out.
I love stories like
Yeah.
that when you have that sort of passion, that belief, and it sounds like a scary decision to make, but you had to search and you find it. So those are like always my favorite stories to hear.
Yeah, and the reality is, I could have always gone back to be a lawyer. If this whole thing crashed and burned, I to this day I keep my license to practice law in good standing, just because maybe that is my psychological safety net, even to this day. But yeah, I always thought law firms will always be there if I need to follow that path and pick up on that. And I haven't ever had to do that again full time, but there'd be nothing wrong with it if I did. So there's some safety there.
Talk to me about work-life balance. As a CEO, how do you balance the professional responsibilities of your personal life?
It's a challenge. I think it's a challenge for a lot of people. I think very similar to what I often find myself saying about the length of meetings, how like the meeting will take as long as we schedule for it. I feel like the workday itself is sort of like that. If I say I'm going to have a 14-hour workday, I'll find 14 hours of work to do. Same would go if it was an 18-hour workday, but at some point, you have to know when to just throw in the towel and say, the work has been done for the day. I'm going to move on to other things unless there's some emergency. So trying to be conscious of it, knowing that more work isn't necessarily better work or better for the business or the people you're with, let alone your personal life. So I think I've become quite conscious of that and trying to set up some just barriers to say, okay, I'm not going past this time. I'll pick it up tomorrow, and that comes with, I think, a little bit of experience in prioritizing things, knowing what can't wait until tomorrow, and knowing what can, or same for next week or next month. So being a bit more focused and disciplined about where I spend my time has helped, and and having a team again, like knowing that I trust the people I work with. They're all very good at what they do. I can I don't need to be micromanaging or supervising every decision. I try to be very deliberate about, is this a discussion? Is this a decision that needs me? Or because if everything needs me, then I haven't built a very good team. So my work life balance improves by the quality of the team and the trust that they've earned over years. So things like that. There's no magic to it. There's times where it's tough, and there's times where you kind of feel like, well, can get a lot done if I just stay focused on where I'm really needed.
When you were talking about that, I don't know who this quote is from. I think Elon Musk has been mentioned in the past, but that whole idea of, if you give 28 days to solve a problem, it's going to take you 28 days. If you give it an hour, you're going to make a decision to what you need to do,
Yeah.
solve within that hour. So that's good
Uh,
advice.
I totally agree. I think there's always exceptions, and I think everyone says they're doing data driven decision making, and I like to think I do the same thing, but also um, sometimes you just have to look at what are the facts in front of you at that time, and make the tough call, because the downside to people who are very committed to data driven decision making is you can always punt things in the future and say, well, let's do a bit of research around that. And I'm not saying research is a bad thing, but if everything needs to go to an outside committee to research the problem and come back, well, not only is that going to stop your productivity, but it's going to hurt your work life balance, because your to do list is never going to go down. So so yeah, I think there's some thought to go into like, well, what decision is kind of instinctual. There are gut decisions, and you have to trust those. And then there's other times where, yeah, you do need more facts in front of you to make the proper decision.
What advice would you give to your younger self? So if you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, there's, there's, I feel like I've been pretty lucky overall. So I don't feel like there's one big thing I would teach. I think, or to teach myself, focusing on risk, I think is a big theme that I keep coming back to, and the ability to embrace risk. I think that might be a big one that I might have found out a little bit later in life how much fun it would be to embrace opportunities that come up. I was what I think what led me to law school, frankly, was looking for a little bit of stability and a defined career path, ironically, which I walked away from. But yeah, an ability to embrace risk and the ability to really calculate and take interesting opportunities. I'd tell myself, I would tell my younger self to embrace those risks a little bit more and maybe have a little bit more fun a little earlier on.
You can even tell yourself to trust your decision making because you've made some, tough decisions across your career path, and it's done well for you so far.
That's true. Although I'm only talking about the decisions that worked out fairly well. We could do another podcast with all the bad decisions that they made along the way, but there's always a lot of both.
Final thoughts. What piece of advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
I think I've touched on a few pieces of advice that have at least guided me and continue to guide me when I look back on the journey. One is definitely that risk piece, to take calculated risks, but also, as I said, like not to fall in love with an idea too much. Be agile, open to new ideas, and really do treat the process of being an entrepreneur as a journey. And there will be significant ups and downs along that road, but it really is it's a matter of how much you're going to learn along the way. And if you're self-reflective, self-aware, and learning from the challenges you face, I think that's what's going to end up providing you with a successful outcome, whatever that is for your business. I don't think there's one way to define if selling the business is the goal. That's great, but also, like I said, so many fantastic entrepreneurs are really just looking for a way to support themselves and build a career on their own terms. Yeah, I think the way you get there is through a lot of self reflection and being open to opportunities.
So with the future of Ownr, is there any exciting developments or anything coming down the pipeline that you could share with us?
Absolutely. We're really deep right now in the process of expanding our product offerings and getting away from the idea of Ownr as just a one-stop shop for incorporation. So, one really interesting thing for your listeners to check out would be what we call Ownr Blueprint, and this is a brand new feature that's really helping entrepreneurs build a business case. And that might sound a little dull, but build the business case or build the business plan for your specific business, whether you're a tech startup or whether you're a tradesperson. It's a really a fun interactive tool which will then start you out, and then if using Blueprint, you find out, okay, well, I'm in a good position to incorporate. Obviously, Ownr can kick off the incorporation straight from there and help you out. But that's exciting. I've always thought we needed to offer something for people who are even earlier in this journey than the incorporation stage. So Ownr Blueprint is the way to get that. So I'd encourage all of your listeners to check that out for our newest product innovation. But that just shows the thinking at Ownr, being like, let's go even earlier in this journey, let's go later in this journey, but let's become a one-stop shop for all kinds of entrepreneurial resources.
It's amazing. I'm definitely going to check that out. So for people who want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
I'm not known for my skills with social media. I'll be the first to admit that. So don't look for me on Twitter or X or Instagram or anything. But LinkedIn's totally fine. That's I'm always available to anyone who wants to reach out on LinkedIn. And for company updates, of course, the website is Ownr, spelled OWNR.co, and you can find Ownr Blueprint at ownr.co/blueprint.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Shane. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks, Pat.